Good afternoon. Right, this is only a 20-minute presentation. It was a last-minute suggestion we should do this. I have 12 questions for David Lenigas, Jabba the Hutt to his friends, one of the most successful stock promoters in the UK over the past few years. I give him credit for that. He has been able to raise money for a range of companies, none of which will ever generate a cent in free operating cash flow, in a way that other people simply haven't been able to do so. He is very successful at raising money. He's very successful at promoting stocks. Sometimes that comes about by him telling lies. Sometimes he just takes an optimistic slant on the way of the company's prospects. But he's very successful. But these things are cyclical. We could go back to about 10 years ago, and the David Lenigas of his day was a guy called Philippe Henri Edmonds, the former England and Middlesex cricketer. He for a while walked on water, and he was, shall we say, somewhat over-enthusiastic in his share promotion, and for a while Phil Edmonds' stocks flew. If you go and check the regulator's report on some of them, he rather blotted his copybook. That tends to happen. If you are an aggressive promoter, eventually you get tripped up. These days, the top promoter for the past 2 or 3 years has undoubtedly been David Lenigas. However, that may all change. I start with just a few questions for him. These are questions that Dave will not answer. He's been given plenty of opportunity to answer them. He has refused to answer them. So we have to ask them again. Given his dues, I asked Michael Howard about Quindell. And okay, I have to ask him 12 times, which I quite enjoyed doing, but in the end he answers. Doesn't actually tell the truth, but at least he answers the question. David Lenigas will not answer these questions. The first one is, how many shares in LGO Energy did Dave Lenigas dump? David Lenigas stepped down from the board of LGO Energy on 27th of August 2014, and at the time put out a statement saying that he was a supportive long-term shareholder and he was terribly excited about the prospects for the company. It was clearly going to be a great investment. The shares moved up to 6 or 7p on the back of this statement. That was August-September last year. Unfortunately for David Lenigas, who then put out a series of tweets over the months that followed. Indeed, he's still tweeting how cheap LGO Energy shares are. Unfortunately for David Lenigas, the annual report came out, and the annual report showed that David Lenigas no longer had 3% in the company. When leaving the company, he had 153.5 million shares. Even allowing for the confetti issues, which are par for the course for LGO Energy, that would still have been over 5% as at April 30th, 2015. His name should have been in the report and accounts as only over 3%. It wasn't. So, question 1 for David Lenigas. How many shares in LGO Energy did you dump, and when did you sell those shares? I put it to you that it would be rather embarrassing if we discovered that David Lenigas had sold the shares in September of last year, just days after saying in a RNS that he remained a supportive long-term shareholder and the company shares were going through the roof. Regarding those share sales, question 2, why did you issue no TR1 regarding your share sales? The company, LGO Energy, has stated that it has received no TR1 from Mr. Lenigas. So I am not blaming the company and its new hapless CEO, Mr. Ritson. I am asking, why did he send no TR1 to the company? Question 3, assuming that you did sell the shares and that the annual report of LGO Energy is not incorrect, and I believe that it is in fact correct, why were you tweeting bullishly about the prospects for LGO at the same time as those shares appear to have been sold? Question 4, I've spelled Cuba wrong, it's actually with an A. I keep on doing that, I don't understand why. Lenas Cuba is the latest stock market vehicle of Mr. Lenigas. This company raised money in July from mug punters at 2p per share. Those people were told this was seed capital for Lenas Cuba. Seed capital, initial capital. The fact is, it wasn't. Because at exactly the same time as the mug punters were putting in £4.2 million at 2p, David Lenigas was getting 140 million shares, that is 28% of the issued share equity, at 1/100th of a penny, 0.01p. Associates of Mr. Lenigas were also getting shares at 0.01p. The people, Lenigas and colleagues, ended up with about half the equity in the company. They paid 1/100th of a penny, whilst mug punters paid 2p per share at exactly the same time. The mug punters were not aware of the sweetheart deal for David Lenigas. They should have been. They believed they were putting up the seed capital and getting 100% of the equity. The reality is they were putting up money at the same time as Lenigas and only ending up with 50% of the equity. The effect on the net asset value is that the net asset value of this company is now about 0.7p per share. The people who thought they put money in at 2p were led to assume the net asset value would be at least 2p. In fact, they were told that there would be a 3 to 10 million fundraise at 5p, so the net asset value would probably be somewhere like 4p. The net asset value is only 0.7p. The reason for that is because Lenigas got all his shares for 1/100th of a penny. Why did he not tell other investors about that? Lenas Cuba, in between its June-July fundraise and its IPO, made a number of acquisitions to tell investors what an exciting story it is. One of those acquisitions was, I think it's Travel Welcome, which is effectively a dormant company, and it paid $60,000 for a 40% stake in that company. Who did it buy it off? It bought it off a company called Green Hair Services. Green Hair Services is run by a long-term associate of David Lenigas. It has only 2 shares. They are owned by David Lenigas' associate. I have emails from David Lenigas using his Green Hair email address, and the placing letter for the 2p placing in Lenas Cuba, well, guess whose bank account it went into? Green Hair Services. The 4.2 million was put into that bank account. I put it to you that paying $60,000 of other people's money for a 40% stake in a dormant company and then dressing this up as a major acquisition is not a particularly good deal. I asked David why he did that. We can then ask Mr. David Lenigas, why did Lenas Cuba fail to get an LSE listing? At the time of the July fundraise, investors were told that the company would be listing on the LSE, the standard list. The company duly put in an application it was in July. By late September, we were told it was still in the process of applying for an application and had come back for its 5th or 6th iteration. It seems the regulators at the LSE weren't wild about this company getting on the LSE, and instead, David Lenigas listed it on the ISDX lobster pot. It is a lobster pot because you can get in, but you cannot get out. Trading volumes in Lenas Cuba on ISDX have been almost minimal. If you are lucky, you can sell £500 worth of shares at somewhere way below the current offer price, which is way below 2p. So there is a question there about why did Lenas Cuba fail to get an LSE listing? Very simple question, David. I look forward to your answer. I've already talked about the buying the company off Green Hair Services, but that's not the only one. Lenas Cuba has bought another company, which it has said is terribly exciting entrance into the Cuban hospitality market. Unfortunately, if you go and check Companies House, you'll find that this company is completely and utterly dormant. It has never traded. That to me doesn't look like a particularly exciting foray. Why not announce? We have invested in a company which is dormant and has never traded, and we're going to be using this as a platform for operations in Cuba, rather than say we're investing in a company which is already operating. Wales is a company which is 49% owned by Stellar Resources, which is listed on the AIM Casino. The rest of the company is owned by people rather closer to Mr. Lenigas. This company's been kicking around for donkey's years. An old friend of some people in this room, Charles Wyatt, was chairman of it in the 1960s. It has never, ever, ever been anything more than a stock promote. When Stellar Resources invested, it was used, and suddenly we were told this was a terribly exciting company. If you check the press reports, you'll see reports in Wales about how there was going to be an exciting new mine. I guess there's no more jobs in Welsh coal, so they were going to go and become gold miners. It hasn't happened, oddly enough. The Gold Mines of Wales issued details on the grades in its gold. Those were done by scraping the bottom of the existing stope. As someone who knows a bit about mining in the back would tell you, that is not exactly a way of an accurate measure of the amount of gold in a mine. Afag is another company run by David Lenigas. This company is apparently running fleets of lorries transporting tomatoes around South Africa. The company claims to have 24 lorries and to own 24 lorries. Why then does these lorries, if you look at them and you check out how much they would cost on the internet, even second hand, you're probably paying 100k a pop for them, where is the tangible net asset value on the Afag balance sheet? Why are they not in at such a cost? Just asking. Alliance Trust in Jersey is a trust company regulated by the Financial Services Commission of Jersey, the equivalent of our FCA. Well, it used to be, it's no longer existing. There has already been a report published, which I published on Share Profits, which makes grave allegations about the management of Alliance Trust. It says that the directors, none of whom were David Lenigas, didn't actually know what was going on, that all the decisions were made by other individuals, that there were a number of transactions, I believe in shares, for which there appeared to be no rationale or purpose at all. They couldn't understand what was going on. There were a number of other breaches of things like money laundering rules. So, a question for David Lenigas is, who ran Alliance Trust? Who were the two individuals who actually run the company? Given that this is a preliminary report from the FSC in Jersey, and a more detailed and serious report is underway, I wonder, has the FSC in Jersey or the FCA contacted you? Only asking. Question 11. Horse Hill is, otherwise known as the Gatwick Gusher, is a oil prospect 2 miles from Gatwick Airport. In April of this year, there was a number of RNSs put out which were grotesquely misleading. The company was forced to issue a correction, but that wasn't before David Lenigas and Steve Sanderson were interviewed by almost everybody in the media. There was a very good programme on BBC a few weeks ago with a very good-looking expert witness which said, had Mr. Sanderson denying that he had ever used the 100 billion barrels figure, which appeared everywhere in the media and saw shares in a whole load of Horse Hill related stocks, many of whom run by David Lenigas, go through the roof. And Mr. Sanderson denied using that. Unfortunately for him, there was then a clip of him telling the BBC that there was 100 billion barrels there. There is no way 100 billion barrels anywhere near Horse Hill. You cannot make that case. You can only do it by extrapolating in the most grotesque way. No one responsible would make that case, but that was made by Mr. Lenigas, by a nudge and a wink, and by Mr. Sanderson directly. Why did they do that? Well, one reason they did that was to ramp the stock prices, because at least one company involved in that, Solo Oil, promptly got a placing away the week after, before the correction had to come out. On a similar line, why did David Lenigas repeatedly tweet that there had been 3D seismic shot at Horse Hill, when in fact there hadn't been? There had been 2D seismic. It was not true. He says it was just a careless error. Well, if you're meant to be a resources expert, you wouldn't make that sort of careless error once, or indeed twice, 3 times, or 4 times. He made it repeatedly. Why did he do that? Finally, a question, this is the only one I don't actually know the answer to. How much, Big Dave, have you made from share sales, salary, and elsewhere, consultancy fees, from AIM-listed companies, and overall, where are the shareholders' yachts? Because the thing is, most of these companies haven't performed terribly well. So let's just look at a few of the David Lenigas companies, which I would suggest would all be sells. I missed out. A Lenigas company can come in 2 forms. One where he's on the board, and 2, one where he's stepped off the board, and if he's below 3%, or in case of TXO, it doesn't really matter, so LGO, whether he's on 3% or 5%, once he's off the board, he can sell shares. So you're either a current Lenigas company, or you're one which is tainted by past involvement. So I missed out FastJet, but Graham Neary's already said that that's a 0 on the main stage about 10 minutes ago. So apologies for that omission, I'll just add it to the list, I'm sure Graham's right. Lenigas was involved in it, it's a sell. But let's go through the others. UK oil and gas shares have gone through the roof over the past couple of days. They're now 1.6p. The market cap is 32 million sterling. Last stated it had 8 million cash, but that's falling rapidly. Why? Well, it's drilling out some fairly unexciting prospects. It's drilling out one highly speculative prospect, and of course, it's the David Lenigas company. There are bloated PLC costs. So I would guess that by the middle of next year, that money will more or less all be gone. It has some fairly boring and uninteresting UK onshore assets. How would you value them? Well, you could value them relative to the purchase price of those assets by Big Dave. I think he overpaid, but I'll be generous and I'll accept he knows what he's doing. They're perhaps worth 3 to 4 million. That leaves Horse Hill worth, if you've seen the cash halves by this time next year, being valued at 24 million sterling. It's stake in Horse Hill. There's another Lenigas related company which is floating next week, isn't there? Zach, what's it called? Angus Energy. Angus Energy owns a far bigger stake in Horse Hill than any of the other existing Horse Hill companies. It's raising 3 million quid with a valuation of 6 million quid. So it's got a bigger stake in Horse Hill than UCOG, but the UCOG implied value is 24 million. I don't think that Horse Hill will ever be a Gatwick gusher. It may be a small field with a nodding donkey, another boring UK onshore gas field. If I'm right, the shares are grotesquely overvalued. Whether you look at it with relative to Alba or you look at it relative to what it's actually going to be. There's an awful lot of hot air in there and there's no way to justify it. LGO Energy shares are now half a penny. Okay, Lenigas is no longer involved as a director and quite possibly as a shareholder either. LGO Energy is capitalised at 16 million quid. It is in default on its banks, the bank debts. The banks have agreed not to pull the plug yet. However, the company is running out of cash. It needs to do a fundraising PDQ. I think when LGO was floated by Mr. Lenigas, there was something like 350 million shares in issue. A few years later, the number's already 3.5 billion. It's going to be a hell of a lot more. The question is whether people are going to put any money in at all. This company has unexciting oil assets in Trinidad, which show massive declines in production from very early days. It has singularly failed to generate cash even in a good oil price environment. In the current oil price environment, there is more chance of me shagging Cheryl Cole than this company generating the cash. It is not going to happen. So why would anyone put money in? I don't know, but your best case scenario here is this company has a deeply discounted bailout placing to raise 5-6 million quid. So you're going to be wiped out, you're going to be highly diluted as a shareholder. Your worst case scenario is that no one is mad enough to put money into it, in which case it's toast. Solo oil at 0.33p. Again, Lenigas has stepped down, but he still tweets enthusiastically about a farm out deal it did last week. Normally a farm out deal would see you getting something in return. This one is the company's going to get some jam tomorrow. The reason it's had to do it is because it's running out of cash. Solo is almost out of cash. Another placing is inevitable. Given its track record of failure, how it has destroyed shareholder value since it listed, that isn't going to be pretty either. Octagonal. This share is trading at 0.9p, a 5 million market cap. This is a business which reversed into a shell. Lucky Punters put in money, 1.7 million, at 2p in July, so at 0.85 to sell. They've already lost more or less 50% of their money. I suppose relative to some David Lenigas stocks, that's pretty heroic. The company has a balance sheet, which is a joke. I've done serial analysis, which I've published on share profits, showing that they have unlisted and listed investments in there at valuations which are very, very hard to justify. My suspicions have been highlighted by the fact that when nobody was looking yesterday, they announced they're going to have an AGM on 21st of December. You're going to break your Christmas to go to that AGM? I suspect not. Well, that's going to be jolly convenient because they're going to allow for a placing with a disapplication of preemption rights, i.e. they're going to be raising money very soon. It's going to be at a deep discount. That's the only way it can get going. To do that less than 6 months after your IPO is pretty poor. What have we missed out? Lenas Cuba, have I talked about that? Lenas Cuba, net asset value 0.7p. It's quite possible that could be impacted very badly if people who feel they were legged over in the 2p placing sue their brokers for not disclosing the Lenigas 0.01p issue. If that happens, The brokers may well lose their money. The brokers, if they weren't told about it by Lenigas, could indeed sue Lenas Cuba. That would dent its cash pile. It's going to be dented anyway by the ongoing PLC costs and the costs of buying more dormant companies. It's an investment company. The shares traded at a big premium to net asset value. They're almost impossible to sell. It is a lobster pot, but they are a sell if you can. Spirit Energy. This is news from the boiler room. This is a bit different. Spirit Energy, the main guy there is John Gunn. John Gunn is also the CEO of Octagonal, which we've already covered. What's Octagonal's biggest investment? Oh, it's shares in Spirit Energy. It's all very cosy in the world of Dave Lenigas. He's also on the board of Spirit as well as Octagonal. Spirit has been promising a breakthrough, a revolutionary boiler that's going to transform our lives for about 2 years now. The breakthrough is always delayed. I don't believe that it will have a boiler which will transform our lives. I think it'll be a serial inertia. The company has serially failed to deliver on its promises. The company has no cash, but right now it's luckily got a death spiral, so it is in debt. This is a pre-revenue company which is in debt. It is drawing down on the death spiral in order to repay the death spiral. It is getting more and more in debt. The company should be doing a placing. Unfortunately, having missed all its targets and disappointed its investors with non-delivery, it would find it very hard to get a placing away as things stand. The valuation is a joke. Sooner or later there will have to be a placing, and if not, you're just going to be diluted by the death spiral. Either way, there is no rush to buy it. Evocutis is another David Lenigas stock. This one's only capitalised at £800,000 at 0.11p. However, I'd suggest it's probably a little bit overvalued. It has 2% of Horse Hill. Well, I wonder what that's worth. It's got a few shares in Noricum Gold, which is a pretty illiquid counter, and it announced in January of this year that it paid $1 million to buy 10% of a tungsten asset in Brazil. It's announced it had an option to pay another $1 million for 20%, and that option expired after 60 days. We are now way over 60 days. In June 5th, there was an extension announced to that option. We haven't had any updates since. I don't know whether the company is going to buy it or not, but it hasn't got any money. It's completely out of cash. So I would put it to you, that is the reason they haven't exercised that option. I've got no idea what the tungsten asset is worth, but I suspect not a lot. The bottom line is however you pronounce it, is going to have to raise money pretty soon via a placing. It is a sell. That just leaves one company, which is the flagship of the Lenigas portfolio, Rare Earth Minerals at 0.77p. Its market cap is 52.5 million. The net asset value there is, I put it to you, probably something in the region of 15 million quid if you risk adjust down. It is an investment company. It is trading at a vast premium to net assets. I did a piece on share profits yesterday. You can reassemble its portfolio of listed investments for 60% of the current market cap of rare earths. It doesn't make sense. One of the reasons that the shares, the rare earth net asset value has gone up a little bit is because its biggest holding is another company, AIM-listed Bacanora, which is presenting today. One of the reasons that the Bacanora share price has gone up is that Rare Earth Minerals has been consistently buying shares in the market. So if there's a bit of weakness in the Bacanora share price, Rare Earth Minerals moves into the market, the share price goes higher, Rare Earth Minerals therefore has an increased net asset value. It's a strange way of doing business. The bottom line is that Rare Earth Minerals is almost out of cash and is trading at a massive premium to net asset value. Anyone will tell you what happens next. There's going to be a placing. If you want final evidence of the fact that Rare Earth Minerals is almost certainly going to have to do a placing, look at David Lenigas' Twitter feed. He says there's no placing coming. I rest my case. Thank you very much.